Broadcasting live from Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, where it has been an emotional morning here as crowds have gathered on the square watching and waiting to see the faces of the 3 men released today as part of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The 3 men were paraded in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza a little earlier in the day. They were released from captivity by Hamas and by the other group in Gaza that have been holding them over the last 16 months, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They are Yair Horn, 46-year-old, Sagi Dekel Chen, and Sasha Trufanov. They were paraded before being handed over to the Red Cross. The men, who had spent nearly 500 days in captivity, will undergo medical examination and meet family members. Now, these are live pictures from Rain in southern Israel, where you can see there a helicopter waiting to bring those 3 hostages to Tel Aviv, where they are going to undergo quite a thorough investigation and quite a thorough medical examination, both external medical examination but also psychological evaluation, to try to determine whether they are in a stable state now to be able to readapt to their normal lives. Sagi Dekel Ken, one of the 3 men who has been released, has now met his wife, who gave birth to their 3rd child in December 2023, 2 months after he was captured. And he has said, "I am great." He is meeting his 3rd daughter for the first time. You can see there one of the helicopters preparing to take off, a short trip to Tel Aviv, where they will now have medical examinations. Now, these are also live pictures that are coming to us from Offa prison in the occupied West Bank, where 369 Palestinians are due to be released. Some of them already have been released, indeed, as part of this ceasefire deal. These are Palestinian prisoners who were held, in some of them, for life sentences, convicted of very serious crimes, murder and attempted murder and attacks on Israelis, but the majority were arrested and held after the 7th of October. The exchange was thrown into doubt earlier this week after Hamas said it would suspend the release, accusing Israel of violating the truths, something it denied. But Egyptian and Qatari mediators helped to stop the ceasefire deal collapsing. So you can see there back in the skies above southern Israel, that helicopter now in the air, preparing to take the hostages to Tel Aviv, where they will meet more of their families. And as I say, they will have the medical checks and to spend a few more days in hospital. Well, a lot of relief then about the 3 men who have been released today, but there are still more than 70 hostages who are remaining in captivity in Gaza, and a lot of trepidation really from people here in Hostage Square over the fate of them. Among them is Nimrod Cohen, who is 20 years old. He is a soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces, and he was captured on the 7th of October. A little earlier, I spoke to his mother, Vicky Cohen, here on Hostages Square, and I asked her for her reaction to the releases today.
I'm very, very excited to see the picture of the 3 hostages that came back to the families after so long. But I'm very worried for my son, Nimrod, who is still in captivity for almost 500 days. He's not supposed to be released in the first phase, only on the second, because he's a young man. And I'm very worried for him. I don't know what his situation. I know he's alive, but I don't know if he's tortured, starved. And I want him back home. I want to hug him also, like the other families.
Can I ask, sorry, this is a difficult question, but how do you know he's alive?
We got a sign of life from one of the hostages who came back this phase, who was with him together from December till May. And he said he was okay, and we knew also from the video that Hamas released on that Saturday, the October 7th, that Nimrod was taken alive. He was not injured. But, you know, we don't know what his situation mentally and physically today.
Just tell me about where he was taken from and what he was doing.
Nimrod is a soldier. He was in his tank together with his team near the border when the Hamas terrorists came, entered Israel, and he was only trying to defend the border, ask the population, but he couldn't manage because there was a technical problem with the tank, and the mass of terrorists came to them, and they didn't have a chance.
Vicky, what has the last 16 months been like for you and your family?
Oh, it's a nightmare. We don't live, we don't sleep. There is uncertainty about everything, even about the deal, the first phase. It can collapse every minute. It's very fragile, and we are worried how long it will take, how long I have to wait till I will see my son, Nimrod.
Vicky Cohen there, still waiting for news of her son Nimrod, who she hopes will be released in phase 2 of the ceasefire deal, if indeed we get to that point. Because as we were saying, there have been so many problems and so many doubts really raised over the last week over the very fate of the ceasefire deal. It seemed to be hanging by a thread after Hamas threatened to suspend the release of hostages, warning that Israel was, in its word, violating the terms of the deal. And then Israel warned that if the releases did not happen today, that the war in Gaza would resume. It was left to regional mediators to try to bring it back on track. Egyptians and Qataris managed to do so. For now, it is holding. But there are big questions over whether the ceasefire deal can still survive and can be viable in the longer term. Let's bring in Mohammed Hegazi, who is a former Egyptian assistant foreign minister and therefore very much in one of the places that is central to the regional mediation in this ceasefire deal. Mohammed Hegazi, thanks very much indeed for joining us here on BBC News. How would you assess the chances of the negotiations progressing now and in terms of moving towards a second phase of the ceasefire deal, and whether this deal can actually last going forward?
Well, if the two parties adhere to their commitment, then we have no problem. It's almost 2 weeks now that the Israelis did not send their delegation to start negotiating the second phase. So the delay of the release, and the second phase, by the way, is the most important to the release of the largest number of the Israeli prisoners. So this delay is unjustified. The continuation of breaching the items and articles of the peace deal or the ceasefire brought us to a standstill, a situation where the mediators have played over the past 5 days an extremely important dealings between the two parties, and successfully we saw the results today. Palestinians are so happy, so is the Israelis. And I'm sure that if the Israeli government move fast and open up a serious negotiation with the true negotiators, then I can tell you that we trust that this very important deal will last. And this is, I think, the chance, not through war, no through resuming hostilities, but is to stick to a very important deal that we, Americans and Qataris, have spent with the Israelis and Palestinians a great deal of efforts over 15 months of negotiations. So time has come that everybody realized that this deal is the only peace deal on the table. The alternative is destructive to the prisoners, is destructive to Gaza's future and to the stability in the Middle East. I think the rationale here is that the two mediators are not enough. The American administration also is engaged. This negotiation was run by the previous administration and the present one. Ambassador Witkoff is in the region, and I'm sure that he plays a very constructive role to bring the parties together. It's up to the Israelis now to answer to the family and bleed of the people gathering next to you.
Let me ask you, Mohammed Hegazi, sorry to interrupt because we are running against the clock as ever. As we were talking to you, we're watching live pictures from the occupied West Bank of families waiting for the release of Palestinians from the jails there, from the Israeli jails there. But you mentioned how the role that the Americans are playing in all of this. Donald Trump, of course, in the last week or so has muddied the waters to a large extent by talking about how the Americans would take over Gaza and resettle the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. What is your reaction to that and the impact that his comments are having on the viability and sustainability of this ceasefire deal?
Well, this is not very conducive at all. You have seen the condemnation of such declarations all over from Europe, from your own country here in the Middle East. The two parties need to sustain the current peace deal, which has been also conducted by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States with the full consent of the present government. We have to ask them to stand accountable to their commitment. Otherwise, such declaration is not helpful at all.
Can I ask about whether the Egyptians are indeed coming up with an alternative? Because Donald Trump and the White House, trying to sort of calm things slightly after those comments in the last few days, have said, well, if others have a viable alternative, now is the time to come up with it. So is Egypt going to propose an alternative for Gaza's rebuilding?
Indeed, we will submit the plan to the Arab five-member summit in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, with Qatari and United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Palestinians, and Bahrain being the president of the current session of the Arab League. And then we will submit it again to full endorsement in the Arab Summit on the 27th of February. After that, we will bring to the attention of all the parties and the United States to represent a roadmap to the well-being of the whole region, not only to Israel and Palestinians, but a stability that we've been all looking for. I think the Egyptian plan is a great hope that needs support from all parties.
Mohammed Hegazi, former Egyptian Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts and insights here on BBC News. Well, a reminder that as part of the ceasefire deal, Gazans are replacing to what remains of their homes, many of them now just in rubble in northern Gaza. And also the ceasefire deal should be seeing a surge of aid getting into Gaza. And while quite a lot of supplies and vital humanitarian aid has been getting in, one of the disputes between Hamas and Israel has been over the provision of mobile homes and caravans that are stacked up at the Egyptian border with Gaza. And in Gaza, they desperately need those to go into the territory in order to provide shelter for displaced Gazans. But Hamas has accused Israel of holding them up. We wait to see whether or not they will get into the territory. But of course, the humanitarian situation on the ground remains very, very, very bad after 16 months of this war. Steve Cutts is CEO of Medical Aid for Palestinians, and he outlined some of the vital needs that there are on the ground in Gaza.
Some aid is getting in, and I think that has to be welcomed. And of course, we're incredibly pleased that the ceasefire plan is now back on course. The temporary ceasefire does need to become a permanent ceasefire, but so much is needed. I mean, this isn't the end of the risk to the Palestinians in Gaza. You know, they are suffering from lack of medical treatment. They need shelters, and shelters haven't been getting through to the extent needed. There are food shortages and obviously clean, drinkable water. So it's a massive challenge ahead, and we would call the opening up of all routes into Gaza and the absolutely unfettered access of humanitarian assistance at this stage.
Steve Cutts there from Medical Aid for Palestinians. So the 3 released Israeli hostages are on their way back here to Tel Aviv, where they will be reunited with more families, more family members, and then stay several days, we expect, in hospital. And as we saw there from those pictures outside Offa prison in the West Bank, more detainees are due to be released there as well, also to be reunited with their families and with their loved ones. You can see here, a quick reminder of that release of the 3 men who were let out this morning after almost 500 days in captivity. Sagi Dekelchen, Sasha Trutfanov and Yair Horn, now on their way back to be reunited with their families and to try to rebuild what remains of their shattered lives.